the hardest career decisions I've ever made in my whole life, because Ozzy and Sharon, they treated me so well.
Yeah.
But I needed to move on, because I did not know how to deal with the loss. And also, the playing with Frankie and Kevin again was similar to me playing with Randy for the reason that we're talking about individuals that I had experienced challenges, failures with the music industry trying to make it. And it was very important for me to be part of something that we were going to build from the ground up. We had no idea how high we were going to go. All I needed to know was that these were people that I used to play with before, that we sacrificed, that we went through the mud, and somehow we were all willing to build something from the ground up.
Because
And
was it
that I
sorry, was it in this sort of gap where you did the mental health stuff and where you sort of
Oh well, yeah, this became once I returned to the group
yeah,
to it went from being Dubrow to mental health officially in October of 1983. Uh, it got renamed Quiet Riot once I returned to the band. I mean, there's videos of Kevin and I doing interviews on MTV, him talking about it.
yeah,
That's when the band got renamed Quiet Riot. And also there is newsletter from the fan club, the Quiet Riot fan club, uh, announcing that I had returned to the band and that now it was changed from Dubrow again to Quiet Riot.
yeah,
And what we refer to in people that have played in the band, we refer to that version being the mental health version of Quiet Riot.
yeah. And then obviously, um, then sort of after that point, you were then in Whitesnake for a bit. How did that come about? How did you meet sort of David Coverdale and the Whitesnake lot? How did that happen?
Well, it was actually very simple. Quiet Riot headline for the Condition Critical in
Hmm.
1984, and we asked Whitesnake to be a supporting act. We're all big, big fans of Whitesnake and Deep Purple.
Yeah.
So for us, it was really an honor to have David and, of course, Cozy Powell,
Hmm.
Neil Murray, and John Sykes
Yeah.
uh, touring with us. You know, it was really, and so we hung out a lot together,
Yeah.
and I got to know about all the personalities, and I said, "Go! This is what happened." Okay, okay. I had given notice to Quiet Riot because that I was going to leave the band after the completing the Condition Critical tour because there were some personal conflicts going on that I felt it was better for us to part ways.
Yeah.
But as I always do, once I commit to something, no matter what, I finish it.
Yeah.
Okay. So Whitesnake, they did a few months with us and then they went on their own tour.
Hmm.
And so on the last night of our us playing together, Quiet Riot throw a party for them, going away party, and thank you for being on our tour.
Yeah.
And as we're saying our goodbyes, David gives me a hug and whispers in my ear, "We're gonna be playing soon together,
Yeah.
darling."
Darling.
Yeah, he has the darling. Okay. So I go, wow, how does he know? I mean, one of the other guys in the band must have told him because I didn't tell anybody. My wife knew about it and the management of the band and the guys in the band, but nobody else knew about that.
Yeah.
We didn't make it public, you know. So I said, okay, so it stays. I had a whole tour, half of the tour left in front of me, so I wasn't gonna let that kind of like, you know, uh, have any effect on me being still me playing with Quiet Riot and
Yeah, yeah.
fulfill my commitment. So the time comes, the tour ends. Tommy Alders and I immediately get together, putting a band together to carry on with the two of us again because we have played together in Ozzy. Now he was out of Ozzy, and we were gonna put a band together. So we get a phone call from David Management, and they invited us to come down to the office. They wanted to talk to us, and so we go there, and they offer us the rhythm section for what became the '87 record.
Yeah.
And I they told us, and I said, well, obviously, Neil Murray and Cozy Power are being replaced because if we don't take this, somebody else will. But actually, Neil Murray got to play on that record,
Yeah.
so he was not replaced. Okay, great bass player too.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm a big fan,
Mhm.
of all his work, even outside of what he was doing with Whitesnake, playing with Gary Moore and Coliseum and all that. Okay, and so I rejected because I asked, so who's still in the band? And they told me that there was no other person, that I knew there was a big conflict going on because we were on tour together. And you know, words, people tell you things, and
Yeah.
say, wow, this is not something go. I mean, a great band, great music, but it's behind it, there's some conflict going on.
Yeah.
So once I heard that that person was still part of the band, I said, no, you know what? I'm going to pass on it because I don't want to leave a situation to join another situation.
Yeah, exactly.
So Tommy and I continue our pursuit of putting our own band together. And then a couple of years later, right before the '87 record was released, they were doing the video shoot for Still the Night.
Yeah.
And we get a phone call from the record company, David's record company, that David wanted Tommy and I to be on the video. And of course, we accepted, you
Yeah.
know. And we went down to shoot the video of Silver Night, and there was Adrian Vandenberg and Vivian Campbell. And now that's a super group.
Yeah, that is
But
a super group.
but it's a super group because everybody had success prior to being in Whitesnake.
Yeah.
Everybody came from successful situations. They had a resume. I had a resume then,
Yeah.
not when I joined Ozzy, but then, you
Yeah.
know, and we hit it off, and the rest is history.
Well, and then to do with Whitesnake, how did your playing style mesh with the likes of, Adrian Vandenberg, Steve Vai, with both being such expressive players?
You're full of good questions, aren't you?
As a guitarist, I would hope there's some good guitar ones in there.
No, that's true. I mean, I do a podcast with a lot of musicians, but you're the perception that you're coming from, it's not typical, so I really appreciate that
Well, that's
because my answers are only going to be as good as the question.
well, this is my
Yeah.
second interview ever. I did my first
Oh
one with
wow.
Paul Quinn from Saxon the other day.
Oh wow.
Um,
Great guys. We toured with them back
yeah, he
in the
mentioned, he
Aussie
said
days.
how I was going to speak to you today, and he was like, "Oh, he's a really nice guy."
Oh yeah, they're a wonderful band,
I
wonderful
went,
people. Yeah.
went down and met him, and he was a really nice dude. We had a nice chat.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you're also born to be a musician, but you're definitely born to do this, to communicate.
Oh,
You're a
thanks.
great communicator. Uh, so I lost sight of the question.
Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, just encapsulate it. Yeah.
Okay, let's go again. How did
Okay.
your playing style mesh with the likes of
Oh yeah, yeah.
Adrian Van
Yeah.
Vexty Vibe, with them being so expressive?
I got it. When I played with Whitesnake, was the very first band that actually had two guitar players.
Yeah,
Ever since I was a kid, I grew up in a one guitar player band, or maybe one guitar and a keyboard, which is a whole different tone spectrum,
yeah,
sound spectrum. So I always gravitated more towards, I hear the sound of the guitar player in the band, I hear the keyboards and every other, and then I see where the bass fits. It's a
yeah,
tonal to fill that. Yeah, I even do it today with Quiet Riot.
Yeah.
We set our tones according to the broad spectrum, and also we listen to the range of our singer, and we want to make sure that we're not too low spectrum wise, tone wise, because if you're too low with a high voice, there's going to be a gap,
Yeah.
and you're going to leave them kind of like floating up there. No, you want to like back them up, with thickness,
I think
so
especially
they
with
can.
David as well, you kind of have to really think about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's 3-piece band.
Yeah.
You got a vocalist and you got drums, bass, and guitar. You know,
Yeah.
yes, the singer is an instrument, but we can make choices. We can say, oh well, this guitar, the Strat is not working. The vocals were probably going to sound better with a Les Paul,
Hmm.
humbucking pickups,
Yeah.
or a Marshall versus a Fender or a Vox or an Orange, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so we can make choices. The singer can't. That's his voice.
Yeah.
So you have to work with them on
Yeah.
that. You know, and make it, some bands it just happens by design, like the Beatles. It was perfect because that's the equipment that was available.
Hmm.
20 years later, the Beatles with Marshall stacks, I don't know
Yeah. Yeah.
what it would sound like,
Yeah.
but having small amplifiers and having the vocals really be at the front and center
Hmm.
of the mix, it worked because
Yeah.
the Beatles were really a vocal group.
Yeah.
When back in the day, when you go to record stores in the 60s, there was a section for vocal groups. And
Yeah.
that's why you had all the British bands that were vocal groups, you know. And so, going back to that subject. So I mean, I've been playing for a long time. I'm 74. So professionally meaning not really as a recording artist, but as a performer. I started playing back in 1969. I was playing clubs,
Yeah.
making money. That's how I bought my car and be able to put in money to help my family, with the groceries and the mortgage and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a responsibility. Then I went out and say, okay, I got to get out of this club circuit. I got to get to the next level. And it's kind of like, have you ever seen a movie when people are being chased and you got to jump from one building to the other and there's an
Yeah.
alley?
Yeah.
It's just like that. Some of us make it to the next building. Some of us just go and land in the dumpster. It's just like it's that huge gap,
Yeah.
between playing clubs and becoming a professional world recording, traveling, touring musician. Okay. And that's when you have to go and say, this is what I'm going to do. And once you get to where you think it's happening, meaning back in the day, you could go to Los Angeles or New York and showcase for the labels. There was, labels would either come to a showcase that you or your management would set up at a rehearsal place like SIR. I don't know what it's like in England, but we have this place called Studio Instrument Rental,
Okay.
SIR. They have rehearsal places. Okay. Showcase rooms. Or you invite them to come down to a club. And sometimes they will send an intern. The intern will be the buffer.
Yeah.
So if the intern likes what you're doing, he'll tell the executive will get the whole credit, not the
Yeah.
intern, for discovering a certain band. And then maybe the intern will get a little bone eventually after discovering two or three bands. It was like, dude, I'm the one discovering these bands. You're getting all the
Yeah.
royalty points on the records and you're getting all the credit, you know.
Yeah.
So you either leave the label to go somewhere else or you get bumped, to an artist relation person.
Yeah.
It's a very common, story. So uh, going back to the to working with two guitar players, these are choices that you make. I had to make certain adaptations to my tonal tonic center of
Yeah.
what I play, and also the choice of notes because I'm playing somebody else's recording
Yeah.
contributions. And you have to respect that. I deeply respect the work of people before me
Hmm.
because that's what I do.
Would
You
you
know,
play it like sort of how he did, or would you sort of put your own bit of flair on it as you were playing it, like live?
this okay, most likely, and there's one exception that I've ever played in a band that I joined that had a legacy that had the same drummer.
Hmm.
That's the Guess Who
Yeah.
with Gary Peterson. And being part of the rhythm section, that's I consider the drummer the conductor of the band. So you have a conductor that sets certain tempos, even within a song,
Hmm.
certain parts. And then again, if you're playing with somebody who had a record, their first hit, 1965, Shaking All Over, which was a remake of a British band. And anyways, so what I'm trying to convey is that this musician who actually started playing drums before rock and roll existed
Hmm.
in the 50s has grown as a musician, this drummer. So he's gonna play the essence of the original recording, but he's not gonna play it exactly the same way because he's a more educated drummer, more experienced.
Yeah.
And we all tend to do that. Even today, that I'm actually recreating. When you create a, the part that you're going to play on a record,
Yeah.
once you did the record and it's in the store, everything you're going to do with that song for the rest of your life is recreate
Yeah.
your own part. And
Hmm.
when you recreate something that you created, you have a little bit of a license to reinterpret your own creation.
Yeah.
Some, let's say if you're playing a classical piece, everything is sheet you're reading exactly what was written
Yeah.
hundreds of years before by a composer. There's not a whole lot of recreation of that.
Yeah.
There's a might be a reinterpretation of the feel, the groove of the song. That's why you got a conductor telling you how to play it. But as far as the notes goes, it's the same notes.
Hmm.
Because you got a whole orchestra, you got about 39 other pieces relying on you playing what's on that sheet. Because they're playing something that goes according to what the score is
Yeah.
of that piece, right? So if you decide, like, you know what, I want to put a blue note in here,
Yeah.
it's not going to work on Chopin, you
Yeah.
know. So you got to stick with that. But in rock and roll, it's different. Rock and roll was born from the blues.
Hmm.
And we know culturally the importance and the significance of the blues artists. The original blues artists was all about they were slaves, and the only way they could find freedom was to expressing themselves through music.
Yeah.
It's all about freedom,
Hmm.
and then there's freedom and there's commerce. Commerce meaning that if you decide to take the song that you had the freedom to create this music, but today you're gonna feel like, you know what, I'm gonna play it different. I'm gonna do a bossa nova version of Paranoid.
Yeah.
The audience didn't come to the show to hear that.
Yeah.
They wanted to hear what they were raised on,
Hmm.
what they've been hearing. They might have been in the parking lot having a beer, waiting to get in the show, listening to the original recording, and they want to hear that.
Yeah.
So that's what they're paying for. So that's where the commerce
Yeah.
comes in, you know. So I take every single of that into consideration. Like I mentioned, I do that with Quiet Riot today. There's certain songs that I had an idea how they should have been played originally that I could not apply when I recorded it because either they were a producer or maybe even an engineer that said, no, I don't like that tone, I don't like that sound, but that's the sound that I wanted. And or maybe the guys in the band say, no, let's play it a little bit different. But now I got nobody. I don't have a traffic cop saying, no, stop, you can't play that way. You just go.
Yeah.
and it's total freedom. So that is finally in my life, being back in the band that I am a founding member of, the mental health version of the band, and a member